Oh, alright, here we go. Here we go. I don't think I need that. I definitely do not need this. All I need is the old phone. Now, rainy day, got the hay in today. Very fortunate. And it's time to hear some voices again. That's right, still here. Thankfully for some, God damn it for others. Right? Alright, here we go. What do we got going on? Mark this as read. Steve, answers for you. Love it. Bring them. Everything is in the Bible. God wrote the end from the beginning. You made a statement, show me no more wars and I'll listen. Well, it just so happens in Revelation chapter 13, someone comes on the scene called the Beast, who is like the Beast, who can make war with him. Whole Foods set up cattle gates so you can't get in. In Revelation, nothing shall be bought or sold unless you have the mark of the beast. A time of testing is coming for all those who dwell upon the earth. The book of Daniel tells who is really in charge over different places. The book of Job, long o sound, I think he meant long ago, tells of some of the things the devil can do. Most Christians aren't really prepared for what's coming. In John, Jesus makes a statement. No greater love is there than to give your life for your friend. Is Jesus your friend? The Blue Letter Bible is a study tool. It tells you the original meaning of words, what language it was written in. The book of James, chapter 1, verse 5, tells us, if any man wants knowledge, come to me, God, for I give it freely. Everyone has to come to Christ and accept the free gift we all have been given, but I will warn you, once you accept Jesus, the fight has just started. You become the enemy of the ones in charge. This email could get very long, so I will end here. Accept Jesus and ask him into your heart. He's waiting on you. Questions I can tell you where to look. Answers, well, that's between you and the Father. John, a servant of my Savior, Jesus Christ. All right, thanks for the kind word. Appreciate it. You know, a lot of people seem to just flat out say, the answer's in the Bible, man. The answers for everything's in the Bible. I guess maybe for some to some extent, but for me, you know, it doesn't matter the issue that I try to bring to light here. Somebody says, well, you know, the answer's in the Bible, all you do is read the Bible. Well, while I'm sitting here reading the Bible, some kid's getting beat up, starved, abducted or molested or raped over there, I gotta go do something about it. Do you know what I mean? I'm making any sense of my response? There's a lot of answers in the Bible. There's a lot of answers everywhere. But there's also a lot of actions that human beings, especially men, need to do. Action. Right? Put all your faith in the Father, God, Jesus Christ, all the faith. Get it. I got it. Read the Bible. It's all the answers are there. I got it. But there's actions that we must do while here alive? Action. You got to do something to solve a lot of the bullshit going on. You have to do something. Right? Tell me I'm wrong. Good men, you got to do some bad shit. Right? I appreciate the kind words, the encouragement to read. It's all in the hands of God. It's all in the hands of the action you choose to take in life as well. Right? Well, sorry, I'm just coming off of the 57,000 children missing thing. It's really eating me up lately. I won't babble about that right now. What is this? Sabe update to I Live in the Night is the title of this email. Tom Underwood again. I thought this is a bit unusual. I was leaving the northern Michigan town of Mayo, just at dusk, M-I-O. Headed west on M72, not completely clear of homes on the north side of the highway. I see an extremely fast and huge brown shape on all fours cross a 150-foot wide road and roadside right into a lighted front yard of a home, too large to be a deer. My neighbor suggested an elk for size. They don't get this far south, nor have that kind of speed. Elk cross the road like they own it. Sabe can cross 150 feet of clear in less than a second. Amazing. That's pretty amazing. And that speed has also scared the living shit out of people just for the speed as well. We got a real long one here. What's this about? New question, RE, hairy man intentions, and edited previous email with more context. Okie dokie, here we go. I'm marking this as red, and in we go. G'day again, Steve. It's a long one, sorry, but I feel like this information needs to be shared. It may affect my employment, but I don't really give a shit. Good for you. I'm connecting with you from Australia again. I've sent this message before, and I'm so grateful and blessed that you read my previous email, but I feel like I needed to make an edit with regards to it because I've reached more of a gut understanding of how this mainstream platform has corrupted, not just the area that I work, but also the people around me. And now I have to not give a shit anymore. Use my name, Adam Bell. What do I have to lose? I'm kind of feeling like I don't know, or likewise don't give a flying shit. Steve, truth should be the gold standard in this life, but it's such a shame that the pursuit of that truth can often at times alienate so many, including myself. Agreed, man. Agreed. It's really sad and frustrating. Despite using natural medications prior to taking my 3 mandatory jabs, I ended up having myocarditis and was sent to the hospital, only being 41 years old, and the young doctor told me that it was caused by the Pfizer vaccine. I have a history of heart disease in my family, and let's just say being pissed off doesn't even begin to explain how absolutely pissed off I am with how this government has treated me and its people and potentially lessened my life without having any evidence prior to rolling out the experimental shit that they did. But what your platform and your YouTube channel have provided is a sense of community, belonging, and acceptance. Thank you so much, Steve, for what you have chosen to do in giving people a voice, not feel alone, not feel isolated within themselves, and feel part of an actual community that does not judge them. You're truly a blessing man. Mate, thank you. Thank you for the kind words, and I'm absolutely pissed right off with you. I stated in my previous email that in Australia, the Indigenous people have a lot of Dreamtime stories passed down from generation to generation. Some of these stories speak of people that lived here in Australia before the Aboriginals settled in this place. Some of the pieces of evidence consist of verbal, pictorial stories, and even rock paintings that some tribes have openly stated were here/created before their people arrived. There has even been evidence formulated from one of the universities of Sydney finding golden scarabs and evidence of Egyptian influences here in Australia and even having a seaboard docking system that was here thousands of years ago. Evidence of international bartering because we have archaeological evidence of Egyptians being in Australia and Egyptians in Egypt having access to eucalyptus oil. Yet as soon as people discovered these things, they were ceremoniously discounted, lost their jobs / tenure, and were completely obliterated by their so-called friends in the establishments. There are rock paintings in the middle of Australia showing that there was a race of very tall beings that met the Aboriginals when they arrived, giving them knowledge and telling them about the great creator. It was only a few years ago that this was brought to the general population, and the art exhibition that depicted these facts is also noting that a lot of Aboriginal elders have clearly admitted these paintings that were found in the middle of Australia depicting these tall beings, teaching about a great creator, was never painted by their Aboriginal culture, but by a pre-existing civilization, was vandalized, and the mainstream made a huge attempt for the general population to not even have any knowledge of this happening. Anyone who does their due diligence and looks at the history of this country can see that there are a lot of things that the mainstream doesn't tell / hides from us. I state these above facts for context because if people fail to acknowledge the history of this country, then they likewise pay no attention to the authenticated indigenous people's stories of Sasquatch-like beings. Some of these things include, but are not limited to, Aboriginal people observing and sharing the land with tribes of Yahoos or Yowies, meaning hairy people. They were described as flat-nosed with wide nostrils, thick eyebrows, and sunken eyes. Their mouths were very wide and had thick lips and prominent jaws. The Aborigines regarded them as another people entirely, and at times battled with them. I have to make a preference here. I'm still researching, LOL. Shouldn't have used that word. Let's just say I'm truth-seeking and delving into the possibility that there is a clear difference between the genetic Nephilim / giant races, purely genetic adaptations of simply human and Nephilim ancestors. Evidence is clearly found all over this world via multiple cultures that existed on the earth. The Sasquatch potentially being more of a hybrid of ancient female / supernatural / animal and potential Neph DNA in a minimalist mutated form. Also potentially the Aboriginal people may have encountered giants and not necessarily Sasquatch, but I have no evidence of that. This is just my internal truth / gut pondering. There's also evidence of Egyptians traveling via boats to Australia, archaeological discoveries of an ancient port found in the Sydney area, and evidence of Egyptians and Aboriginals bartering resources such as eucalyptus oil, which has been found in Egypt. There's even detailed evidence of Egyptian travelers having relations with some of the indigenous population. Some independent anthropological studies of certain tribes which existed and still exist today in the population have shown a lot more Middle Eastern finer features and similar facial physical characteristics to Egyptians. Some of these Egyptian encounter stories still exist today in rock carvings / hieroglyphs of Egyptian origin found deep within the Australian outback. Heck, there are even paintings of our Aboriginal tribes having interactions with / hunting dinosaurs / prehistoric type creatures. To be specific, there were Aboriginal accounts of pterodactyl type creatures before the scientific books even came out depicting what they may have looked like, and the Aboriginals clearly identified them. Also, recent discoveries and eyewitness accounts. Also, an Aboriginal tribe even painted a picture of a plesiosaur and gave it to a pastor in the Christian church as a gift to depict their culture of their interactions with ancient animals. The reason why some have not spoken openly about this in the past is that, one, when they do, they're shut down and silenced by mainstream academia. Also, it creates potential political headfuck that the powers that be want to avoid so they can keep pushing their narrative. It's such a shame because history belongs to everyone. It's everyone's story no matter where you damn well come from. We're all one race, and this world is as much ours as the animals and the hybrids that somewhat coexist with us. We are one people, group. Every human being on the face of this planet of existence that we live on is 99.99% identical to everyone else in the world. So in effect, if you hate someone because of the shade of their melanin in their skin, then biological standards, you pretty much bloody hate yourself. Authentic and true dialogue regarding real evidence and our true history would bring us closer as a people and make us much richer as a society, but instead, they want us to toe the line with their interpretation of our human history, which in turn dumbs us down. To be honest, if they told us the truth, it would prove that as long as human beings have been alive in this world, the archaeological and historical evidence would prove that human beings have always been connected. They have traveled, they've connected with multiple different people groups, but they want to put us in a box and say that we were completely separated and had no idea of each other, which is complete bullshit. If people do their due diligence and pour themselves into the research / our joint human history. The reason why I bring this up is that it gives a bit of a contextualized backstory to this conversation I had with my next door neighbor's housemate. I already sent this in my previous email, but I just wanted to give a little bit more context to the story, just for a little bit more detail, because I felt like either my grammar or my description may have not been accurate prior. So, here's my proxy experience again, more detail. When my next door neighbor asked me to come over to have a beer with him, we proceeded to have a beer, and during this time, his housemate came out to join us also. This housemate looked so dark in complexion that I thought he was Aboriginal, yet his facial features looked more Caucasian, I guess you would say, so I asked him if he was part Indigenous. He laughed and proceeded to tell me that his complexion was all to do with working in the harsh Australian sun for so many years. He proceeded to discuss his occupation and some of the odd jobs he had done in the past, and basically just talking about his time in remote Australia. He told a couple of stories, and then spoke about some of the tribes that he had interactions with, and some of the amazing things he had seen that many Australians would have no idea about. While listening to him, I brought up what I had researched regarding ancient cultures, and about the archaeological finds within Australia that a lot of people wouldn't know existed, and likewise don't even talk about. I even brought up the fact that some Aboriginal cultures talk about a pre-existing tall race of people that occupied this country. Taught them about a one true creator, and pre-existed their dreamtime stories, and also influenced their interpretation of the world around them. As soon as I said this, he smirked and said that he had a story to tell me. His story happened approximately 6 years ago. He told me that while he was working in the remote outback, he was doing some odd jobs for a mining company, and that one time he was there, someone that appeared to have been an Indigenous elder brought an individual into the area where the mining operations were happening in order for this guy to do a job. The housemate stated that he didn't know why this individual was specifically brought in, but that it may have had something to do with either a rite of passage or maybe learning experience from the outside culture. From what I could gather, the housemate wasn't 100% sure. This was only his assumption, and info from other co-workers, he stated he was not privy to that information. The individual who was brought in by the elder was said to have been male, approximately 7, maybe more feet tall, slim and lean, and had a very pronounced conical-shaped head. Clearly obvious from a modern human being. That his skin was purple. The housemate emphasized the whole purple thing a few times as he remembered the amazement at the color of this bloke's skin. The individual apparently looked absolutely nothing like an Australian Aboriginal. He stressed that fact. He emphasized that. My next door neighbor clearly identified that he lived many years without Indigenous Australians, and adding this fact because originally in the comment section, a lot of people stated that some darker skinned people, depending on light reflection and things like that, might have a purple hue to them. But to be specific with what this individual had stated, considering he lived with them for so many years, he was extremely specific when he claimed that this guy's skin tone was completely purple. He lived with very dark-skinned indigenous people. I asked what happened to the individual, and my neighbor's housemate shared that this individual apparently did not last long doing specific work with the mining company, as he supposedly found it hard to adapt to the jobs he was involved with. He subsequently left soon after arriving, going back to wherever he came from with the elder. And as I said, I just wanted to give some more specific context on that particular story. My neighbor's friend also mentioning going on a private helicopter ride deep in the Western Australia outback, where he saw incredible sights while traveling through and around some of the mountain ranges. He said that he saw very large, incredibly designed structures built into the mountains that were so high up, he had a hard time figuring out how anyone could have accomplished the feat. Apparently these were structures that almost seemed skeletal in nature, yet extremely architectural, very specific, that almost looked like dwellings of some kind. They were extremely ancient and very high up on the plateau. From what I gathered from the individual, even the Aboriginal pilot, even though stating that this was a no-go zone, even the indigenous people of the area had no idea where these structures came from. It predated their history. The existence of these structures, because they predated the Aboriginal travel from the upper islands into the Australian continent, apparently made them wary of these pre-existing historical and archaeological facts. The bloke who was the helicopter pilot pointed out that this area was kind of like a no-go zone / sacred area that almost no one from the outside world had seen. And needless to say, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I heard these stories. But they also rang true with some of the off-limits / doesn't exist evidence I'd looked into over the years that mainstream doesn't discuss. I'm sorry this is taking so long, but as you say, you might as well let it all out, so we don't have to sit back and wait to send another email. Absolutely agree, and let her rip and keep going. Primarily because there's so many other people out there that really need their voices heard, and I don't want to take up their time, but there's something I really need to say. There are particular people on YouTube which I respect, and I'm not judging because it's not my place to judge. But there are a particular well-meaning people out there. But there are a particular well-meaning people out there which claim they have experiences / personal relationships with these hairy men / Sasquatch individuals. And by the way, I'm not talking about our beautiful geneticist lady who you had the amazing interview with on the membership side of your channel, which totally blew my mind. This is another individual who is well-meaning, but I think this YouTube individual might be misled. And I'm saying that in humility. These people outright claim that they are not connected to anything Nephilim-based, that they are our ancient ancestors. They are masters of nature and energy, and that they pre-existed us. And as I said, I honestly, in my heart, don't want to judge these individuals, but just the DNA evidence alone, including multiple ancient writings from hundreds of ancient cultures, proves that we human beings were their progenitors. They came partly from us, and we existed before them. They originated from us, and something unnatural, not the other way around, along with an unknown male aspect, which actually goes hand in hand with something that is potentially spiritual or outside of this dimension. When I've had discussions with these individuals who claim that these Sasquatches are their superior elders, and give them complete truth, I ask them one question. If they are even one part human, which prevents them from being... Sorry, one more time. If they are even one part human, what prevents them from being manipulative? Just like we have the ability to manipulate. Why should we believe 100% of anything they say? We have to keep our head and spirit / gut on a swivel, even if we encounter something that is interdimensional and part spirit and nature. We must test it. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. I'm sure everyone would love to hear from these Sasquatch people and hear what they have to say, but they can manipulate just like we can manipulate. The gut sense is spirit-led, even if you don't recognize it at first. It's something that is to be listened to more than our own desire. So we need to be wary, seeking and recognizing truth, the deliberately hidden truth, and the manipulation which currently encapsulates our human society, in my opinion, means that I've already joined the Club of No Return. I'm a proud member. And personally, I'm so thankful to anyone out there in this community for their boldness and strength in sharing their truths. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to read this email. It means a lot to me. Encouragement is encouragement, and validation is validation. You do both of those things, and I want to thank you so much for doing that. For me, I can see truth. I can see through the mainstream bullshit, but I struggle from day to day. I've been kicked out of my rental property because of the rental / housing crisis here in Australia, and I'm now living with my parents. Despite the fact that I work full-time and pay an exuberant amount of child support, which I have no issue doing because I love my children. But it's hard at times, and I feel isolated. But one thing that rings true to me at the end of the day, even if I can't afford groceries at times, or even if I can't afford to have a quote-unquote normal social life, truth is the only thing that matters. And at times it's the only thing that feeds me. And it's the only thing that I really need, because I would rather be poor and consume truth than have a lot of money and gorge on empty mainstream shit. It's encouraging that someone as bold as you is out there listening and validating other people's truths. Truth originates from the people. Our governments no longer serve us. People that aren't silenced. And people that are allowed to speak. Thank you, and just know we all have your back. I pray for you and your family, and I wish you all the best. Keep going, mate. You bless and encourage more people than you know. I've said it before, but we absolutely need and are so blessed to have you. Your hard, bloody backbone, especially in these days. I'm so thankful for your unwavering persistence, truth, and strength. Love and prayers, Adam. Adam, absolutely appreciate those kind words and words of support, and your share, and your knowledge, and your due diligence, your digging, and your sharing, your time donated. Huge. Stay the course. Don't get down. Stay happy and positive. Everything you need in life will come your way. There's no way it won't. There's no way it won't. You're just going through a little bit of a challenging moments, right? We all have those challenging moments. We all need to have those challenging moments, right? But we need to go through them. Can't quit. You got to go through them and learn, and then you get better. It's the only way. If life was easy and handed to you on a silver platter, well, it's proven fact you're more than likely to kill yourself. That's a fact. The Australian government's possibly, if I had to rate right now, who is the most evil of the governments in the world today, I think first place is the UK. Absolutely. And for what I've been learning, watching, observing, the Australian government is probably a close number 2 in being absolutely evil. Evil meaning what they have and are doing to the people of those countries. Canada is definitely right up there. The previous, current administration in the US right now. Who else? I'd say France is probably right up there. Their government is right up there being absolutely evil. Germany, big time. The list goes on. I'm trying to bite my lip. There's a lot going on right now in the world. There's a lot going on with me and knowledge and what I want to encourage people to talk about and acknowledge. And I'll get back to hearing other voices. I absolutely appreciate you, my man down there, the land down under, and I hope one day you can flip your government on its ass and make them pay. The Australian government is just living feces. That's it. Barely living feces. Who's next? What do we got? Everyone gets heard. This next email is titled Sasquatch Warning Me. All right. Let's hear it. Hey Steve, my name is Albert Bruce. I'm from the island. I'm guessing Vancouver Island? I lived here my whole life. I'm 20 years old and I know Sasquatch exists, so here's my story and how he warned me to stay away. Alright, I'm going to guess you're meaning Vancouver Island. It all started a hunting trip. We had a new guy with my dad and I. So with new guys, I like to tell stories that I've experienced. So we went to Saltspring Island, where there is no predators on the island, so that day my dad, the other guy, and I came upon a little field with some deer in it. So we decided to get a little closer. We circled around to get to them. By the time we get to the deer, a few of them already walked off somewhere, but there was one deer left. We were about 30 yards away then. My dad wanted to get closer, so we did. But we noticed the deer was looking around like it was scared. We never seen a deer look around like that before, but my dad decided to shoot the deer. It ran off like another 40 yards into the timber, so my dad sends me and the new guy in the timber to look for it. We found it under a cedar tree that had all these branches pulled down perfectly. It looked like a shelter. It had some bones in it already as well, which made me think something was living there. Later on that day, it was before it got dark, so we decided to check out the other side of the mountain, so we did. We came up on a corner of the trail and seen this massive 2-point buck slowly walking towards the bush. I take the shot as stops. He runs down the bushy hill, and from the top I can hear him twitching away, so I start making my way down to him. But as I get halfway, I slipped and fell. Right after I fell, I heard this scream/hollering noise. It was kind of far off, so you didn't really hear. So I thought I was just hearing things, so I kept walking. Then I slipped again, and I heard the screaming noise, but so much closer. And then all of a sudden... Hold on. How did I lose that? I slipped again, and I heard the screaming noise, but so much closer. Then all of a sudden, I hear these heavy footsteps coming quickly, which I thought it was the guy running up to me. But with the heavy footsteps and the screaming getting closer, I figured it wasn't the new guy. It was Sasquatch. One of the scariest days of my life. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I would instantly see Sasquatch and twitch. That's it. Now, do we just get left hanging? You may have sent us you hit send too soon, maybe, possibly, I don't know. So many questions after that email. Did you get the deer? Did you see the guy running? What was he warning you of? If you're still here, email us back and send in the rest of your email. I got a funny feeling you hit send too soon or something there, because we're missing a whole bunch. Now, what can I tell you guys about Saltspring Island? There's one little teeny tiny accidental misinformation drop there. When the young man said there's no predators on Saltspring Island. That's false. Actually, I have a book. A real cool old book, written by a family who was government predator control people. That means they had hounds. They tracked and ran down Everything. Lots of bad cougars in Vancouver Island, Saltspring Island, and more. Lots of bears, wolves. They had a shit pile of stories. The amount of children that were killed by cougars and have been killed by cougars, attacked by cougars in Vancouver Island is ridiculous. But getting back to you saying, unfortunately, that there's no predators on Saltspring Island, one of the stories in that book, actually, let me back it up. There's actually a point of land between Duncan, or the Duncan, there's a point of land between Vancouver Island and Saltspring Island, the closest point. And it's noted that at nighttime during mating season, you can hear the big cats screaming back and forth at each other. That was in this book by these people. I wish I got the book somewhere. I probably got it right there. I'll look for it later. Anyway, but one of the stories I'll never forget was the sheep farmers, herders on Saltspring Island, one of them, a big cat was killing all of their sheep, killing a whole bunch of the sheep. So at a last effort to save his sheep, he had 30 something left, put them all in the barn and closed them up for the night. The frickin' cat wormed his way into the barn and killed every single one of them. Every one of them. What a shitty way to go, especially when you get down to being the last one. Anyway, so there you go. And another time, years ago, I went to Saltspring Island to buy a drift boat to use for steelhead fishing. Off a guy who lived on Saltspring Island, fellow hunter angler. And he's shown us his photo album. And they had a whole bunch of dead cats they shot in Saltspring Island in their back 40. There you go. I'll guarantee you there's been wolves there because wolves have shown up on every single small island between Vancouver Island and the mainland for years. What else? I shot a huge buck in Saltspring Island one time with my bow. There you go. If you're still here, man, email us in. Did you see him? Did you see him before, possibly, meaning the Sabe person? Did you see him during that encounter, and did you get your deer? I'm curious. Now, well, Adventure Dog's passed out. My story bracket of the Momo question mark and bracket is a Taos email. I graduated high school in May of 1972. I would be 17 years old until mid-August. My goal was to hitchhike to California, where my brother and his wife lived, in order to go stay with them and attend college there for free, or almost free due to recent legislation. My grades had not been good enough to get a scholarship, and I had not participated in sports. My parents were not excited about my plans of hitchhiking to the West Coast, and instead they were able to provide me with a used Ford Econoline van. I fixed it up with money received from relatives for my graduation. I put in a plywood floor and cut an old piece of carpet to fit. I built a 2x4 bed frame using one wheel well as a fourth leg, and threw a single bed mattress on it. I used a bungee cord to hold a 3-drawer nightstand against the van's inner wall behind the driver's seat, and with a 2-burner propane stove on top, also bungee corded, I was done turning the van into a simple camper. I left on the day when Hurricane Agnes was just hitting that part of western Pennsylvania where I lived. Agnes chased me all across Ohio, Indiana, and half of Illinois. I eventually made it to California and to my brother's apartment, and after some checking around, I found I could not go to college free, or almost, in California, unless my parents disowned me and my brother adopted me. This did not suit my parents at all, so I decided to travel around the western United States in my van before returning to Pennsylvania and home. I visited Yosemite, Redwood, Crater Lake, Glacier, and Lawson National Parks. I drove the coast highway from the Golden Gate Bridge to Seattle. Mostly I slept in the van and cooked for myself, but on occasion I would get a cheap motel room to get cleaned up enough to be socially acceptable, and then get a restaurant meal. After I did all that, I returned to my brother's place. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and they had just had a baby, my nephew. So he rented me out a studio apartment close to the beach. And after a month and a half of that California lifestyle, I moved out of the little apartment and drove to Las Vegas to meet up with my parents and brother and sister-in-law for a family get-together, since my parents were newly grandparents. After we were done, I drove my parents to the airport for the return flight and started driving back to Pennsylvania. I recall making it to just inside the state of Missouri, past Kansas City, before finally crashing in the back of the van while parked in a rest area along the interstate. I woke when it was still dark and began driving into the coming sunrise, noting with amusement in the rearview mirror the way the sun was shining under my van such that I could see the shadows of the tires receding forever and the sun shining in between. The land was rural and slightly rolling. I noted that it took about 6 or 7 miles to get to the next rise, and that then descend and ascend to the next rise. While thinking this would be a good way to occupy myself for a while, I suddenly saw movement up ahead, and on the right side of the road. The right side of the road was a huge field of green that seemed to go on and on. Soybeans? I was not sure, but it was very green. And running across that field of green was someone dressed from head to toe in black. And the running he was doing was flat out running. It reminded me of the way a football player would run for the touchdown while being closely chased by a hopeful tackler. At 60 miles per hour, every second was bringing me closer to the runner, who was traveling at a 90-degree angle north to my direction east. As the running figure grew larger from my perspective, the picture stopped making sense somehow. The proportions of the runner were not correct. The ratios of the arm lengths to the leg lengths did not seem correct, as well as the ratio of the torso length to the length of the legs. Second by second, I was becoming more and more convinced that this was no football player. The upper body appeared to be massive. The arms were too long, and the speed at which it was running was amazing. And while the runner had been running perpendicular to my direction, I began to do the mental calculation that he or it was possibly on a collision course with me. As this realization slammed home into my consciousness, I began to see that black was not the color of this creature. My angle of view of the creature had shifted enough to allow the sun to show me that the fur or hair that this thing was covered with was actually brown, or kind of light reddish brown, similar to a typical Irish setter. But it was patterned with various other shades of brown. It reminded me of a shag carpet I had once seen with various shag lengths and various shades of brown, light, medium, and dark, and the dark brown almost being black. At this point, I estimated that this thing was easily over 9 feet tall, and I estimated its weight to close to 1,000 pounds. You know how big that is? That is big. A 1,000-pound man-like being is absolutely huge. And it was still running flat out, and it was coming fast. Time slows down when you're involved in the lead-up to a car wreck. I'd been there and done that with regard to being in a car wreck, and this situation was like that now. I was tensed up and on the edge of the driver's seat. I calculated that at that weight and at that speed that this thing was running, it could knock my van off the road and off of its wheels. That's when I noticed that the van was starting to rise up a slight incline, causing me to lose sight of the runner, which had left the front windshield and had then been visible only through the passenger side door's window. I looked around and realized I had reached the middle of the distance between the two rises and the interstate had a culvert for water to flow under it. The culvert was a huge concrete pipe, probably 8 to 10 feet in diameter. There was one under the 2 lanes running east and one under the 2 lanes running west with a grass-covered median between them. I could not see the thing at this point, but based on the last several seconds of observation, I judged that it passed directly under my van in the culvert below me, perfectly synchronized with the intersection of my passing. And you can bet that my eyes were glued to my van's driver's side rearview mirror, in that the next second to see the thing continue its run to the next culvert, but that did not happen. I just drove on, staring at the empty rearview mirror. I think I was in shock. The idea of stopping the van and going back to look into that culvert was never even a hint of a thought in my mind. It was as though I had just dodged getting hit and killed by a train. Again, I was 17 years old when this happened, and I'm 64 years old today. I try to keep up with Bigfoot or Sasquatch research, hoping to find out if what I saw was really real, and comparing all Bigfoot drawings and videos to my recollection of that morning in Missouri. The best likeness I've ever seen to date is Patty, but without the breasts. This guy was definitely male and massive, and I never saw any facial features since, as it ran, its head was down, as though watching its footing. I've also given a lot of thought as to the whys and wherefores of my encounter. Was it just a random event? Or was I singled out? Observations of me at some of or all the national parks I'd recently visited and hiked in? Was it hoping to catch a ride? Did it wonder what would happen if it rammed its body at full speed into a van going 60 miles per hour? I guess I'll never know. Maybe it was running for its life from another group of Sasquatch which wanted to kill it, or it just wanted to sleep all day under the freeway in the shade and the cool water in that culvert. I never said a word about this to anyone until about 20 years later. By then I was old enough to know who my friends were and not to care if they thought I was crazier than they already thought I was. From that first telling, I've since been rewarded with 3 additional stories from 3 of my friends / co-workers. One took place in Maine, one in Tennessee, and the other took place in Washington. They belonged to 3 others who did not think my story was BS. They believed me because they are believers. Seeing is believing. And one final note on the color pattern of the fur or hair in this thing. I recently heard a story online about how they sometimes lie down at a tree line to watch or observe. My memory of the pattern on that thing was as though it had been submerged in something up to its waist on one occasion, and on another occasion somehow had coated itself everywhere from its right shoulder to just above its left waist and everywhere below. My research has shown that in that part of western Missouri, there is a park with a lake just south of the highway where this sighting occurred. And of course, 1972 was the year that many sightings had occurred in Missouri, leading to the inception of the term MOMO, which stands for Missouri Monster. Alright, I'll try to recount the 3 stories told to me in response to my telling them my story. The first fellow told me that while he was living in Maine, he would walk through the woods at the age of 8 years old. He would walk through the woods at the age of 8 years old to get a sister who was 5 years old when she would get out of kindergarten. He explained that his mother would have to work, that his stepfather was not a good person. So he would do this to protect him and his younger sister on that walk home through the dense woods, even though he was very scared himself to be walking in those woods. Oops. Hold on. Sorry, you guys. Well, once he called it the, quote, old man of the woods, end quote. This creature stepped out of the trees onto the path and offered its hand to my friend and walked the little boy that was holding his sister's hand on the other side all the way to the end of the path through the woods. He said the hand was so huge, it was like a joke because his 8-year-old hand was so small. But he said that folks around the area all knew this creature and all thought it was benevolent and not to be feared. And he and his sister were not afraid, but actually were reassured that they were safe while in his presence. Also, this happened only once, but he said he thought it was watching out for him and his sister from then on. Holy shit. The second fellow told me of his encounter during a morning commute to work, just south of Yakima, Washington. Traffic was heavy on the road, and it was still dark. And suddenly, from the wooded area to the right of the driver, and ahead of him, a young teenage-looking Bigfoot charged out of the forest and ran smack dab into the side of the car in front of him. The young-looking Bigfoot was instantly stopped by the mast of the car, and the forward motion of the car caused the Bigfoot to spin, or rather roll, down the side of the car, never losing his footing, to end up running alongside the storyteller. He recalled that at the slower speed due to the traffic, he was perfectly matching the speed of the Bigfoot, who was now looking into his passenger side window, allowing him to have a perfect view of the little Bigfoot's face. They basically locked eyes with each other. And then after a few seconds, the Bigfoot peeled off and ran back into the woods on the right side of the road from where it come. He said he could tell from the face it was a young one. The third story gifted to me was not first-hand, but was instead told to my coworker by his brother, who was an avid hunter in Tennessee. The time of the sighting was early morning, while deer hunting from a stand, waiting for the sun to rise. His brother heard and felt really heavy footfalls approaching his tree stand. He told me his brother said this thing was massive, huge, and tall, such that his deer hunting weapon would be utterly useless against it. He never even told me whether his brother was using a bow and arrow or rifle to hunt with. And it doesn't matter. His brother stayed stock still and watched as a giant Bigfoot paused nearby to sniff the air. One possible reason for this behavior, as I was told by my coworker, was that his brother had applied female deer urine to his clothing in hopes of attracting a big buck. But after a few seconds, which no doubt seemed like hours, the Bigfoot turned and walked away, the footfalls and ground shaking, diminishing as it did so. But then, in less than a minute later, the same thing transpired. The Bigfoot came back and sniffed the air again, but never looked up to see the hunter in the tree stand. My coworker was himself a huge man, tall and large, and few people would ever want to mess with him, and I was told his brother made him look puny. But in this situation, his brother was so afraid he almost soiled himself. After the second go-around, his brother waited about a half an hour before climbing down and going home to go straight to bed. I was told he never... End of email. That's it. Suddenly ended. Damn. Well, if you're still here, go into your inbox and see what you sent, and if you missed adding to it, add to it and send it in, alright? And I'll read it. Shit. There's a whole pile of interesting sightings in there. Interesting experiences, but how about smacking into the side of the car and then just running with it? Like nothing happened. Crazy. Oh my god, here's another book. Alright, that should suffice for today. Crazy. There you go. More members of the Club of No Return chimed in. Amazing. Adventure dog chewing on yesterday's deer bone down there. Elk bone. I think it's an elk bone today. Well, I'm going to get moving. I can't wait to get my internet back in here. I'm still waiting for that cable. There's a strike going on with our post office, so I don't know if Amazon delivers these things or the regular mail. I'm guessing it's probably going to be an Amazon truck, so maybe I'll get my new cable and I'll get internet in here soon, because when I do get my internet in here, I'm going to share some emails, and I'm going to light up a video on that screen and put the camera there, and you guys are going to watch it with me. Alright, we're going to watch it together. I'm hoping if I do it that way, then a whole pile of truth is going to hit your eyes and ears that a lot of real bad people don't want you to know. Alright? I'm willing to do that. I'm going to sit here and watch and listen to that video all the way through, and hopefully a bunch of you do the same. No matter what your stance is on the topic at hand when I hit that video play button, alright? It says man up and listen. Listen. Get smarter, get better, and listen to truth, alright? Here we go. Decals, decals. Keep reminding everybody, she still has some. I keep forgetting. She's got hats. She's got t-shirts still. But she has some new things being made as I'm sitting here. All brand new everything that nobody's ever seen ever before. So she's pretty excited about that. I don't know when that's coming. I'll let you know when it hits here. And that's it. That's all I got for today. Well, I got lots more, but that's all I'm going to share is that today. So, there you go. Don't forget. In order for people, adults, but more specifically children, by the tens and hundreds of thousands, in order for children, those numbers of children to go missing, the people in charge are the only ones who can make that happen. The people in charge, they are the only ones that can facilitate that happening smoothly and go under the radar. The only ones. Now the big question is, what's happening to these children? Are they food for some kind of beast? Right? We need to talk about this. More people need to talk about this. If you hear, especially from the FBI, that all those documented children have gone missing, and you don't bat an eye, what do you think is wrong with you between the ears? And I'm asking that as an honest question. How do you think it is you got to that space where you can hear directly from the law that many children have gone absolutely missing and you don't even bat an eye at it? How do you think you got to that place in life? How do you think your mind got to that place in life? That's a big question for me, and I'm not being insulting. That's a common sense question. That's a rational, common sense question. How do you think you got to that place that you just keep flicking away? Don't look, don't acknowledge, don't talk about it, don't repeat it, shrug, oh wow, that's pretty shitty, and then off you go somewhere else, just like that. How do you think you got there? Is that amazing? That's absolutely amazing. What an amazing time to be alive. Speechless. Anyway, carrying on. I'll be back tomorrow. Will I bring up the missing kid thing again? I won't stop. Later.